Hello and welcome into a special edition of the FSView. We are breaking down everything spring football. It has been 112 long days since the Noles ended their 2015 season, but I'll be dadgummed if it hasn't felt like longer. Thankfully, we've had the spring football game to spice up the lives of Tallahassee natives since then. Alongside Ariya Massoudi, Safid Deen, and Kostidakis, I'm your host, Lauryn Vickers. Guys, let's get started talking about quarterback, which is obviously the most exciting part of spring football. Who is going to be the starter next year? So we have an all-star roster looking at four guys between DeAndre Francois and JJ Constantino, who are veterans but have yet to take an actual snap in an NCAA game. You have Malik Henry, an early enrollee, and then you have incumbent Sean McGuire. Who are we thinking is going to make a name for themselves next year?
Well, I mean, obviously you have a bunch of different styles of quarterbacks. You have DeAndre Francois, can move a little bit, can throw a little bit. You've got the pocket passer, the true pocket passer, and Sean McGuire. You got the big arm of JJ Cosentino, and then you've got Malik Henry, who he's kind of a wild card. We don't really know. We know what the hype is about Malik Henry, but we don't really know what he can do. He had a strong spring game, but he might be a little less fleet of foot than DeAndre Francois, but maybe has a little bit more accuracy than Frenchie, as they like to call him on the football team. But should be a fun battle. I think it seems like every year we have a quarterback battle now since Jameis Winston's left, and I'm interested. I'm excited. I think that's the best word, is I'm excited.
Yeah, I think for the second straight year, Jimbo has his quarterback competition going on, and this I think it's only a two-horse race here. I think it's only going to be Sean McGuire, and I think it's going to be DeAndre Francois as well. And I think Francois playing that spring game in Orlando in the same stadium, FSU is going to open the season next year against Ole Miss. I think that really bodes well for him, and it's in his hometown as well. But, I mean, you can't, knock the fact that McGuire does have some experience. He has led this team to, victories. One at Florida especially, last year was a big one. And, they couldn't quite get over the hump at Clemson or Houston while he was a starter. But, his experience definitely puts FSU's offense further along than maybe where DeAndre Francois' lack of experience doesn't.
Yeah, Sean McGuire's big strength, of course, is that he's been in the system. He knows the playbook and system better than anybody on the roster. That's for sure a fact. Francois, you see, is getting a little bit more comfortable with it. You saw that in the spring game, it wasn't more of an exhibition. He was kind of putting him in these situations where, what are you going to do? Francois wasn't even taking off and running, because who does that in a spring game? He was just kind of showcasing. He was making his state case for it right there. Malik Henry kind of wanted to get in that conversation too, but you saw how he was still a little bit raw. He's only been on campus for 3 months now at this point. If you had to say, it would be like if Jameis Winston played spring football in his freshman year instead of waiting until his redshirt year, because Malik next year will look a lot different in the spring game than he did this year. And I think you go into fall seeing, is Francois going to catch up the ground that McGuire already has from that experience?
So, assuming that Sean McGuire is going to be the starter in the fall, what are we thinking? How long is he going to be in that starting spot? What is it that he does that makes Jimbo put someone else in his place?
This is going to be very hard for Jimbo, to not go with Sean McGuire, honestly, to open the season. I mean, along with the experience, he knows Jimbo Fisher's offense. He's been in the system for a couple years now. It's a really intricate offense. We saw Everett Golson really, struggle with it last year. And, there's a reason that redshirt season is there for the players. They really need to grasp those concepts all across the board, not even, just the quarterbacks. Even, Dalvin Cook had some struggle learning this offense. All the wide receivers from last season, and even Ryan Izzo at the tight end position. There was a lack of production all across the board because you have new players in this offense pretty much for the first time last season. 2016 is going to be a great time. All those starters on offense really return if you go with McGuire at the helm there. FSU looks like it's going to have a great chance to build on what it had last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fisher always kind of has his guy in the back of his mind of who he wants to go with. I think the team kind of knows who their guy is. Now, whether or not they let everyone else know, who knows, but or when that'll happen. But I think on the inside of the locker room, I think people know who kind of the guy going forward is. They had that feel with Jameis Winston before he ever took his first collegiate snap that he was going to be the guy when him and Coker had that battle a few years back. I think there's the guy, but I think Jimbo Fisher at some point you'll see. I think it's pretty early in the season if he's going to make that move to DeAndre Francois. I think it'll happen early in the season.
So, kind of going off, transitioning away from quarterbacks, let's talk about some of the rising stars in the spring game. We had, Auden Tate, Ryan Green. We had some of the freshmen like Malik Henry and Ricky Aguayo, who's, stepping up in his brother's absence. Carrie, I'm going to start with you. Talk about, what do we see out of some of the new stars in the spring game?
Well, last year, one of the big issues of the Florida State offense was there was no wide receiver presence, really. Like, you had Travis Rudolph to lean on, but then after that was a pretty big drop-off. Kermit Whitfield, of course, is a good contributor, but can't really rely on him every play. Auden Tate, the way he was playing and the way he was going up and getting balls and just doing everything that he had to do in that spring game, as much as you can show off in a spring game, really showed that there is a big step up for this FSU offense this year. And I think that played, not to go back to quarterbacks, but that helps out. If you have Everett Golson not knowing the offense and then you have wide receivers not doing it, it shows. And that showed last year. And I think between Ryan Green, who showed he can be a capable second option behind Dalvin Cook, I think the offense just has the capability to be huge next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, Auden Tate definitely flashed, but, one guy you want to see make some plays is George Campbell next year. He had a 41-yard play during the spring game. And, they have to build some depth behind, Travis Rudolph and Kermit Whitfield and Bobo Wilson. All three of those guys had more than 50 receptions last year. It's Jimbo doesn't really use that many options besides his, top three. Even Nick O'Leary was one of those top three members when he was on the team. Ryan Izzo, George Campbell, and Auden Tate. I think those three guys are really, big parts of this offense moving forward because not only are they the biggest receivers, the biggest targets. FSU needs to get in the red zone and they need to score some touchdowns. And they had 2013 was a historic season, but they've had a gradual drop off in red zone opportunities and how much they've scored touchdowns. Those three guys can definitely help the offense a lot next season.
I think we're waiting on Travis Rudolph to turn into that receiver that everyone's been expecting him to turn into. I mean, he was a 5-star receiver coming out of high school. He picked Florida State over Bama in the Under Armour game, and everybody got excited, comparing him immediately to Rashad Green. And I think we saw flashes of his brilliance last year. I mean, the Peach Bowl. That Peach Bowl was incredible, and I mean, we've talked about it a couple times. He's shown those flashes of being incredible, and he's talked about this offseason now taking that next step and being the number one receiver Florida State can lean on. I think you just need, if you get that from him, you have, I think, Bobo Wilson and Kermit Whitfield. Those are reliable passing targets. I don't think they're ever going to take over a game for you, but on 3rd and 6, I think Bobo Wilson over the middle will get the job done. I think a swing pass to Kermit Whitfield on first down. You need kind of a versatility there that Jameis Winston, I know we go back to Jameis Winston, what he had with Kelvin Benjamin, Rashad Green, and Kenny Rawshaw. Going back to the point, versatility. That's what FSU needs, and I think they have that. They have those options. George Campbell and Auden Tate will only add to that versatility. I think we're looking for breakout seasons from them.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, looking ahead to next season, which we're all very excited for. There's a lot of games to keep our eye on. We have UF at home, we have Clemson at home, but we also have some games that could be trap games. We're playing at Louisville, at NC State, at Miami. So talk about some of the games that you're most excited for and then games that you're nervous for.
Well, one that USF play at USF for, I think, the 3rd week of the season, and USF last year turned out to be one of FSU's biggest wins, I think.
Well, I mean, Safid, isn't that usually that's USF's? It's almost like their Super Bowl. Every year it's a bunch of kids that either didn't get recruited by Florida State or any of the big 3 schools, and they play with a chip on their shoulder. You always see that. USF now has a little bit of talent, so I think you have that factor in to a good coach with Willie Taggart and what they have coming there right now. I think it's scary, but I think it's the week after. I believe Florida State plays Louisville, or very, very soon after. They have a road game at Louisville, and I think everyone knows that the Louisville Cardinals, they give Florida State a little challenge. I think, was it 2 years ago? They made things scary against the Noles on that Thursday night in their all-black uniforms. I remember those on, what was it, close to Halloween, if I remember that.
The day before.
Yeah, and I think that's a trap game. I hate playing in Raleigh. Just NC State scares the living crap out of me all the time because of what Florida State's history in Raleigh in that stadium. But games that
North Carolina at home too.
North Carolina's. They were one of the threats last year, and they finished the year with a strong record. But games that you're looking forward to, I mean, Clemson. Aren't you looking forward to playing the runner-up, the national runner-up, Deshaun Watson? It's an exciting schedule, Safid. I really think it's a super exciting schedule, one for the fans, kicking off with Ole Miss. It doesn't get any more fun than that.
Like you guys alluded to, all these games around the state. I mean, FSU's going to play 9 of their 12 regular season games in Florida. They're not going to have to go to travel on the road a lot. The game I'm most looking forward to, outside of North Carolina at home, they were in the ACC title game last year. Outside of Clemson is really that Miami game. I think you look at this team, Miami has lost FSU 6 times in a row. the last 6 years, and
That's
so
incredible.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And on top of that, Miami has quarterback Brad Kaya, brand new coach, and Mark Richt. I think those guys try to figure it out. And that home crowd, they're always ruckus whenever FSU comes to town. It's all the time, all the time. Whenever those fans get in the stadium, they're pretty ruckus for the most part, right? But I think that Miami game is a big game. Not only is FSU traveling around the state with games in Orlando and Tampa, Miami, to solidify its brand next season. That Miami game is really going to show where FSU stands above the rest of the state, and it kind of stopped Miami's little momentum that they have trying to build this program again.
Well, even I'm not positive it's going to bring them within 1 or 2 games, but if they win against Miami this year, Florida State will either tie up or be 1 game behind in the all-time series record, which is kind of crazy to think about. If they've won 6 years in a row, that's a big thing to overcome. So if you can beat them in Miami and then maybe beat them in the ACC championship game, FSU is now the all-time leader in that series.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of recruiting, Florida State does so well in the 305. They pulled Dalvin Cook right out of the 305 and so many other players. That is such a big game for Florida State and Miami recruiting. If Miami wants to get back to where they were, Mark Richt, I think, can help them. But he's got to
puts legitimacy.
He's got to take back. He's got to take back his
Florida
backyard.
State, Mark Richt's first year, then it really kind of the U's back.
Yeah, he's got to take care of his own backyard and kind of sell Miami back to South Florida as this is our spot. South Florida's kind of its own state with talent. They're so good every year. And Florida State and Jimbo Fisher have been kind of taking control of that here in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, while Miami's trying to get its program going, I think Dalvin Cook's not going to let his, one of his last opportunities to play in that stadium, and close to home as a Florida State Seminole. It's going to be his last time he plays in that stadium as a Seminole. I mean, he'll definitely want to leave a lasting mark.
There'll be as many Knowles fans as there are Canes. It is almost like every single time we go down there. I mean, it's like, 70,000 show up, 30,000 are probably Florida State fans. It feels like a neutral site game. Tallahassee's a dope South.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It'll be definitely exciting to start off the season with something that's not a random school in the middle of the Bible Belt. Something like that. I think
it'd be nice to not have to go to Dallas either and play Oklahoma State.
Right.
And that's because you start off the team or season with a non-conference team, but then Oklahoma State 2 years ago wasn't really the big opponent that everybody thought it was. Now Ole Miss, they're going to be top 15 almost definitely.
They're definitely
They got Chad Swag Kelly back.
This is probably the first schedule in a few years where FSU can legitimately lose a game and then still be in that national title race.
And it's an SEC school. I think as much as people hate the SEC and hearing about the SEC nonstop, it's a big deal to get all the spotlight will be on Florida State and Ole Miss that weekend.
It's a big year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you win that game big, I think you made a statement. I mean, I think you made a big statement, and you've kind of
put people on.
You've kind of put the momentum in gear to kind of start the season off hot. And the playoff committee, as much as they love quality wins, you can't deny Florida State beating one of the SEC's darlings there early in the year.
So, guys, let's wrap this up with what are your predictions for this upcoming season for this team?
It's so hard not to just be like, of course, you're a national championship contender. I don't think you're being biased when you say that or exceeding expectations or anything like that. You saw a team last year in a down year only lose 3 games, one of them on a fluke play, the other one in a bowl game where you were playing against an opponent who was obviously much more hyped and ready for you. And better. They played better in that game, not to take a thing away. But if you look at this season, you look at the schedule, you look at the talent on this roster, anything less than 1 loss would blow my mind.
I think it's the fact that Clemson plays here in Tallahassee bodes well, way more better for the Seminoles' favor. Because we saw last year, Death Valley was, one of the most raucous crowds I've ever seen. And they have that reputation, I think FSU can definitely bring that same environment for especially that game. Whoever wins that game ends up, representing the league, representing the division in the ACC title game, and so with a win over Clemson, especially at home, it just plays into FSU's favor. And I think, along with that Florida game as well, the Miami game, all those things kind of play into FSU's favor into trying to get into the playoff. And the schedule's tough enough. They're not going to have that, you paid a weak schedule. Charleston Southern's on the schedule, USF's on the schedule, but they have a lot of other opponents around to make it more well-rounded.
Yeah, every year is dependent on injury luck and how that goes. If Florida State is battered with injuries, 3 losses with that schedule isn't out of the question. I think everything's setting up, though, to be a special season for Florida State. I think you've got so much talent back on the defense. You've got everyone returning on offense. People forget when Jameis Winston won a national title that everybody around him was upperclassmen, that everybody had been through the battles and through the rigors of that 2012 season, in which some disappointment
Learned a
against
lot of
NC State
lessons, yeah.
and against Florida. I think they learned their lessons last year. I think you saw the hurt in the eyes of the players against Clemson. I think you saw the hurt after the bowl game. DeMarcus Walker came back with a couple of other players to try and get this team to where it needs to go. And I think there's an infusion of young talent that'll help Florida State. We didn't mention Levante Taylor, but man, he's going to be special there in the punt return game. I think this might be Florida State's year. I agree that I think Florida State loses one game somewhere. I think it's just so hard to go undefeated. And when Florida State did it a couple years ago, it was an all-time great team.
Yeah.
I think Florida State still finds a way, though, back in the playoff, because I don't think Florida State and Clemson get into the playoff, but I think Florida State beats Clemson. I think Florida State finds a way into the playoff, and then what happens there? I mean, it's anybody's game once you get into the playoffs. You got to win two, and hopefully we'll see the Noles in Tampa.
Alrighty, guys. Well, the Noles will resume their journey to another national championship on their season opener on September 5th. Now, all that's left to do is just pray that there's no more scandalous mishaps over the summer. That's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and Godspeed for the rest of the summer when all that's left is NBA playoffs and praying that your college baseball team makes it to Omaha. One final roll call for Ariya, Safid, and Perry. I'm Lauren, and we'll see you next time.